There is a quiet moment that arrives for many people somewhere in their 60s or 70s. You reach for something on a high shelf, and your hand doesn't go quite where you intended. You walk into a room and pause, momentarily uncertain why you came there. You read a menu in a dimly lit restaurant and find yourself holding it farther away, then farther still, until your arms are fully extended and the letters still blur at the edges. These small moments are easy to dismiss, easy to attribute simply to the passing of years. But here is what most people never realize. Many of the changes we accept as inevitable aging are not inevitable at all. They are the result of systems slowly falling out of use, of capacities quietly diminishing because they are no longer asked to perform. And nowhere is this more true than with the visual system. The eyes are not merely windows that cloud with time. They are living tissue, extensions of the brain itself, and they respond to how they are used. The question is not whether your vision will change as you age. The question is whether you understand what drives those changes and what remains within your influence. Most people never learn the answer. But you are about to. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The long view. Understanding your visual system and preserving sight across the years. There is a moment that arrives quietly for most people, usually somewhere in middle age or beyond. You hold a menu at a restaurant and find yourself moving it farther from your face, then farther still, until your arms are fully extended and the print is still not quite right. Or perhaps you notice that night driving has become more challenging, that the headlights of oncoming cars seem brighter and more scattered than you remember, or that it takes longer for your eyes to adjust when you walk from bright sunlight into a dimly lit room. These small changes are so common that we tend to accept them as inevitable, as simply what happens when years accumulate. And to some extent, they are normal. The visual system, like every other system in the body, changes with time. But there is a meaningful difference between normal age-related changes and preventable decline. Understanding that difference, and understanding how the eyes actually work, opens the door to practices that can support visual health across all the decades of life. The eyes are often described as windows, but this metaphor falls short of their true nature. They are not passive openings through which light passes. They are active, living tissue, extensions of the brain itself. The retina at the back of your eye is neural tissue, continuous with the central nervous system. During embryonic development, portions of the brain migrated forward to form the eyes, taking up residence in the bony sockets that protect them. This means that when you care for your eyes, you are caring for brain tissue. When you understand your vision, you are understanding a fundamental aspect of how your brain interacts with the world. What follows is an exploration of that system, how it changes with age, and what research suggests about supporting its function across a lifetime. The information is drawn from decades of scientific investigation, from observations of populations with exceptional visual health, and from an understanding of the basic biology that underlies sight. It is offered not as a prescription, but as knowledge, the kind of knowledge that allows informed choices about the small daily practices that accumulate into lasting impact. Part 1. The architecture of sight. What vision actually is. To understand how to preserve vision. It helps to understand what vision actually is and what it requires. The process begins with light. Light enters the eye through the cornea, passes through the pupil, which expands and contracts like the aperture of a camera, and then through the lens, which focuses it onto the retina at the back of the eye. The retina contains millions of specialized cells called photoreceptors. These come in two main types. Cones are concentrated in the central retina and handle daytime vision, color perception, and fine detail. Rods are more numerous in the peripheral retina and manage vision in low light, allowing you to see at dusk or in dimly lit rooms. Together, They capture light and convert it into electrical signals through a complex chemical process that depends on vitamin A and other nutrients. These electrical signals then travel through layers of processing within the retina itself before being sent to the brain via the optic nerve. What reaches the brain is not a picture, but a pattern of impulses. The brain interprets these patterns, compares information from different parts of the retina, and constructs from them the coherent visual world you experience. This construction happens so effortlessly that it is easy to forget it is happening at all. But consider what your brain accomplishes every moment. It takes flat, two-dimensional information from each retina, combines it with input from the other eye, which sees the world from a slightly different angle, and computes depth and distance. It extracts meaning from patterns of light and shadow, recognizes faces and objects, tracks motion, and ignores the constant small movements of your eyes and head to create a stable perception of the world. All of this happens in fractions of a second, continuously, without conscious effort. The brain devotes approximately 40 to 50% of its processing power to vision. This immense allocation of resources reflects the fundamental importance of sight to human function. We are visual creatures, and our brains have evolved to prioritize visual information above most other inputs. The ancient purpose of eyes, despite the sophistication of conscious sight. The most ancient function of the eyes has nothing to do with recognizing faces or reading text. The earliest eyes in evolutionary history existed for a more fundamental purpose: detecting light to determine time of day. Every cell in the body needs to know whether it is night or day. Cellular processes follow circadian rhythms, cycles of activity and rest that govern metabolism, hormone release, DNA repair, and countless other functions. These rhythms must be synchronized with the external world, and light is the primary signal that accomplishes this synchronization. A specialized group of cells in the retina, called melanopsin retinal ganglion cells, handles this task. These cells contain their own light-sensitive pigment and respond specifically to the wavelengths present in morning and evening light. They do not contribute to conscious sight. Instead, they send signals directly to the brain's master clock, a cluster of neurons above the roof of the mouth called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This master clock then broadcasts timing information throughout the body, telling every organ and every cell whether it should be active or resting. When these cells detect morning light, they signal that daytime has begun, triggering increased alertness, elevated body temperature, and readiness for activity. When evening arrives, they allow the body to prepare for sleep. This ancient system operates continuously, whether you are aware of it or not. It explains why light exposure at different times of day has such powerful effects on energy, mood, and sleep. And it reveals that your eyes are not merely organs of sight, but also organs of time, anchoring you to the daily rhythm of the planet. Part 2. How vision changes with age. The normal course of aging. Every system in the body changes as years accumulate, and the visual system is no exception. Understanding which changes are normal and which may signal underlying problems helps distinguish between adaptation and decline. The lens of the eye gradually loses flexibility over time. This process, called presbyopia, typically becomes noticeable in the 40s. The lens, which must change shape to focus on near objects, becomes stiffer and less responsive. This is why reading glasses become necessary for many people, not because of disease, but because of normal age-related change in the physical properties of the lens. The pupil also changes with age, becoming smaller and less responsive to light. This means less light reaches the retina, which is why older adults often need brighter illumination for reading and close work. The smaller pupil also adapts more slowly to changes in lighting, which explains why transitioning from bright sun to dim interior spaces becomes more challenging. The vitreous, the gel-like substance that fills the interior of the eye, undergoes changes as well. It becomes more liquid and may shrink slightly, sometimes pulling away from the retina. This can cause floaters, those small specks or threads that drift across the field of vision. A few floaters are common and usually harmless, though a sudden increase warrants professional evaluation. The retina itself shows age-related changes. Photoreceptors gradually decline in number, and the retinal pigment epithelium, a supporting layer beneath them, may accumulate waste products. The macula, the central region responsible for detailed vision, can thin over time. These changes are part of normal aging, but exist on a continuum with more significant conditions like age-related macular degeneration. When changes signal something more, distinguishing normal aging from developing problems requires attention to patterns. A gradual, symmetrical decline in vision that responds well to updated glasses is typical. Sudden changes in one eye, distortion where straight lines appear wavy, or loss of central or peripheral vision deserve prompt professional attention. Flashes of light, especially when accompanied by a shower of new floaters, can indicate that the vitreous is tugging on the retina. In some cases, this can lead to retinal detachment, a sight-threatening emergency requiring immediate treatment. The appearance of a curtain or shadow across any part of the visual field is another warning sign that should never be ignored. The risk of certain eye conditions increases with age. Cataracts, clouding of the lens, become more common and eventually affect most people who live long enough. Glaucoma, damage to the optic nerve often related to elevated pressure within the eye, can develop gradually without noticeable symptoms until significant vision loss has occurred. Age-related macular degeneration affects the central retina and can progress to substantial visual impairment. Regular comprehensive eye examinations become increasingly important with age. These examinations can detect problems before symptoms appear, when interventions are most effective. They also establish a baseline against which future changes can be measured. Part 3. Light as signal, morning light, and the daily reset. The most influential factor in visual system health may have nothing to do with what you look at and everything to do with when you look at light. The melanopsin cells described earlier are most sensitive to light at specific times of day, particularly morning hours when the sun is low in the sky. Morning light exposure serves as the primary signal that resets the circadian clock each day. When these cells receive bright light early in the day, they trigger a cascade of effects throughout the body. Body temperature begins its daily rise. Cortisol, a hormone involved in alertness and metabolism, follows its natural morning peak. Melatonin, the hormone that facilitates sleep, is suppressed so that it will rise again at the appropriate time in the evening. The duration of exposure needed is surprisingly short. For most people, 2 to 10 minutes of morning light reaching the eyes is sufficient to trigger this response. The key is that the light must be outdoors. Sunlight through windows is significantly less effective because glass filters out many of the wavelengths these cells require. Cloudy days require longer exposure, perhaps 15 to 20 minutes, because the clouds reduce light intensity. This morning practice does more than regulate sleep. Research suggests that consistent morning light exposure influences mood, energy levels throughout the day, and even metabolic function. The circadian clock governs so many aspects of physiology that supporting its accurate function has broad effects on health. The contrast between day and night. The visual system evolved under conditions very different from those most people now experience. For most of human history, days were bright and nights were truly dark. The contrast between daytime illumination and nighttime darkness was enormous, providing clear signals to the circadian system. Modern life blurs this contrast. Indoor lighting, even when relatively dim by daylight standards, is far brighter than moonlight or starlight. Evening screen use exposes the eyes to light containing wavelengths that can suppress melatonin and delay sleep. Many people spend their entire days indoors, never experiencing the bright light that the visual system expects during daytime hours. This flattening of the light-dark contrast may have consequences. When the circadian signal is weak because daytime light exposure is insufficient, sleep can become disrupted. When evening light is too bright or contains too much blue wavelength light, the body may not receive the signal that night has arrived. Over time, this can contribute to patterns of poor sleep, low daytime energy, and perhaps broader metabolic effects. The practical implication is not that evening light must be avoided entirely, but that awareness of light exposure across the day can be helpful. Bright light when you want to be alert and awake. Dimmer and warmer light as evening approaches. And darkness during sleep hours approximate the conditions under which the visual system evolved. Seasonal light changes. The amount and quality of available light changes dramatically with seasons, particularly at higher latitudes. Winter days bring less light overall, and the sun remains low in the sky for more of the day. This can affect the circadian system and, for some people, mood and energy. Many experts observe that spending more time outdoors during winter months, particularly around midday when light is brightest, can help compensate for the reduced overall illumination. Even on overcast days, outdoor light is substantially brighter than indoor lighting. A midday walk provides light exposure that supports circadian function and may benefit mood and energy. For those who find winter months challenging, light therapy devices that emit bright, full-spectrum light can be helpful. These devices are designed to provide the kind of light exposure that supports circadian function, typically used for 30 minutes or so in the morning. They are not a complete substitute for natural light, but can supplement it when outdoor exposure is limited. Part 4. The demands of modern visual life. The near-point problem. Perhaps the most significant change in visual demands over recent generations is the amount of time spent looking at close objects. Reading, computer work, smartphone use, and other near tasks occupy hours of each day for many people. This represents a dramatic shift from the conditions under which the visual system evolved. When you look at something close, your eyes must work. The muscles controlling the lens contract, making the lens thicker to focus near objects onto the retina. The extraocular muscles turn your eyes inward slightly so that both point at the same near target. All of this requires effort, even if you are not consciously aware of it. When you look at a distant horizon, the opposite occurs. The lens flattens as the controlling muscles relax. The eyes assume a more parallel alignment. The system rests. This is why looking at a distant view can feel refreshing. Why people naturally seek out vistas and open spaces when they need a mental break. The concern among many vision researchers is that prolonged near work, without sufficient distance viewing to provide rest, may have long-term effects. The lens and its controlling muscles are adaptable tissue. If they spend most of their time in the contracted state required for near focus, they may become less able to fully relax into distance focus. This could contribute to the development or progression of nearsightedness, and it may affect the flexibility of the lens over time. The indoor environment. Indoor living compounds the near-point problem by limiting opportunities for distance viewing. Most indoor spaces have walls, and even the largest rooms provide limited distance for the eyes to focus. The visual system rarely gets the chance to engage its distance mode when you spend most of your time inside. Indoor lighting also differs from natural light in important ways. It is generally much dimmer than daylight, even in brightly lit rooms. It has a different spectral composition, often lacking some wavelengths present in sunlight. And it is constant. without the gradual changes that occur as the sun moves across the sky. The combination of prolonged near work and limited distance viewing creates a visual environment that is very different from the one in which human vision developed. This does not mean that modern life is incompatible with visual health, but it does suggest that intentional practices to provide the kind of stimulation the visual system expects may be beneficial. Screens and digital devices. Digital screens add another layer of consideration. They are typically viewed at close distances, contributing to the near-point load. They emit light directly rather than reflecting it, which creates different contrast conditions than reading printed materials. And they are often used for extended periods without breaks. Some people experience what is sometimes called digital eye strain, a collection of symptoms including eye fatigue, dryness, burning, and blurred vision after prolonged screen use. This is not a permanent condition, but a functional stress response. It indicates that the visual system is working hard and would benefit from relief. The small muscles that control focus can become fatigued like any other muscles. Taking regular breaks, looking at distances, and allowing the eyes to rest can relieve this fatigue. The specific duration and frequency of breaks may vary by individual, but the principle is simple. Sustained near work requires periodic interruption to allow the visual system to reset. Part 5. Practices for visual health across the years. Bringing distance into daily life. The single most valuable practice for supporting visual function may be simply ensuring that your eyes regularly have the opportunity to look at true distances. Not across the room, not down the hall, but distances measured in miles rather than feet. A horizon is ideal, whether across open water, over farmland, or from a high vantage point. The key is that the visual system can engage its distance mode fully, with the lens flattened and the focusing muscles relaxed. Even a few minutes of distance viewing provides relief from the constant near focus of daily life. For those without easy access to horizons, high vantage points that look across cities or landscapes can serve. Looking up at clouds or the sky itself provides distance stimulation, though the sky offers fewer visual details to engage the system. The principle is to give the eyes something far away to look at, allowing the full relaxation of the focusing apparatus. This practice can be integrated into daily routines. A morning walk that includes time looking at distant views. Lunch breaks spent outdoors rather than at a desk. Evening moments watching a sunset or the first stars appear. These small pauses accumulate over time into meaningful support for visual function. The principle of variety. The visual system evolved to encounter a wide variety of distances, lighting conditions, and visual tasks. A hunter-gatherer might scan distant horizons for game, examine close objects for details, track moving prey, and navigate varied terrain, all in the course of a day. This variety provided natural exercise for all components of the visual system. Modern visual life tends toward uniformity. The same reading distance, the same screen brightness, the same indoor lighting for hours on end. This uniformity may not provide the range of stimulation that keeps the visual system adaptable. Introducing variety is simple in concept if sometimes challenging in practice. Reading at different distances when possible. Spending time in different lighting conditions. Looking at moving objects as well as stationary ones. Alternating between near tasks and distance viewing. Giving the eyes different things to do rather than the same thing continuously. Even small variations can help. Holding reading material slightly closer or farther than usual for short periods. Looking out a window periodically during indoor tasks. Spending some time in dimmer lighting and some in brighter. These variations engage different aspects of the visual system and may support its overall adaptability. The value of motion. The visual system is exquisitely sensitive to motion. Specialized circuits track moving objects, allowing you to follow a bird in flight or a car passing on the road. These circuits require stimulation to maintain their function, just as focusing muscles require use to stay adaptable. Modern environments often provide limited motion stimulation for the visual system. Screens show moving images, but these are two-dimensional and do not engage the depth and tracking systems in the same way as real-world motion. Much of daily life involves looking at stationary objects in relatively static environments. Intentional engagement with motion can help maintain these tracking systems. Watching birds or other wildlife. Observing moving vehicles. Following a bouncing ball or a moving hand. These simple activities stimulate the smooth pursuit system, the ability to track moving objects smoothly rather than in jumps. Some people find value in activities that naturally involve visual tracking. Sports that follow a ball, whether playing or watching. Time in nature observing animals. Even watching clouds drift across the sky provides gentle motion stimulation. The key is giving the visual system experience with movement, maintaining the neural circuits that process it. The range of focus. The lens of the eye has a range of focus, from its most flattened state for distance viewing to its most curved state for the closest objects. Using the full range of this capability may help maintain flexibility over time. This is the principle behind simple exercises that shift focus between near and far. Holding an object at arm's length and bringing it slowly toward the eyes while maintaining focus. Then moving it back out. Alternating focus between a near object and a distant one. These movements take the focusing system through its range of motion, providing the kind of stimulation that maintains adaptability. The sensation of effort when focusing on something very close is normal. It indicates that the muscles controlling the lens are working. The relief when shifting focus to distance is also normal. The sensation of those same muscles relaxing. Paying attention to these sensations can provide feedback about the state of the visual system. As with any form of exercise, moderation applies. Brief periods of moving through the focus range are likely more beneficial than prolonged strain. The goal is not to push the system to its limits, but to give it regular opportunities to move through its full capabilities. Part 6. Light exposure and daily rhythms. Morning practice. The daily practice of morning light exposure deserves emphasis because of its far-reaching effects. This is not merely about vision, but about the fundamental timing system that governs the entire body. The ideal is to be outdoors within an hour or so of waking, with eyes open and facing generally toward the sky, but not directly at the sun. The light does not need to be bright enough to be uncomfortable. On clear days, a few minutes suffice. On overcast days, more time is needed. The goal is simply to signal to the circadian system that daytime has begun. This practice works best when it becomes routine, as automatic as morning coffee or breakfast. A short walk, sitting on a porch or balcony, or simply standing outside for a few minutes while planning the day. The consistency matters more than the duration. For those whose schedules or circumstances make morning outdoor time difficult, maximizing light exposure at other times of day provides partial benefit. Midday light is brighter than morning light and still provides circadian input. Even afternoon light is better than no outdoor light at all. The morning timing is optimal, but any outdoor light exposure supports the system. Light throughout the day. The circadian system benefits from continued light exposure throughout the daylight hours. This does not mean staying outdoors all day, but rather ensuring that indoor spaces receive good natural light when possible, and that outdoor time is incorporated when schedules allow. Many people spend their entire workdays indoors under artificial light, then return home to indoor evenings. This pattern provides minimal light exposure to the circadian system, potentially weakening the signal that maintains robust daily rhythms. Simple adjustments can help. Positioning workspaces near windows. Taking breaks outdoors when possible. Eating meals outside when weather permits. Even short exposures accumulate, and each provides additional input to the circadian system. The quality of indoor lighting also matters. Full-spectrum lights that more closely approximate natural light may provide better circadian support than standard bulbs. Brighter indoor lighting during daytime hours is generally preferable to dimmer lighting. The goal is to make the indoor environment as supportive of daytime function as possible. Evening wind down. As evening approaches, the visual system and circadian system benefit from a different approach. The body needs to receive the signal that night is coming, that it should begin preparing for sleep. This means gradually reducing light exposure as evening progresses. Dimming indoor lights. Shifting to warmer, less blue light sources. Avoiding very bright screens in the hour or two before bed. Creating an environment that feels increasingly night-like. The timing and degree of this wind down vary by individual. Some people are very sensitive to evening light and need to dim things considerably. Others are less affected. The general principle is that the visual system should experience the transition from day to night, not an abrupt shift from bright artificial light to darkness. Evening activities can support this transition. Reading under a warm lamp rather than a bright overhead light. Taking a short walk outside as dusk falls. Sitting by a fire or candlelight. These activities provide the visual system with the kind of gradual dimming it expects, supporting natural sleep preparation. Part 7. Nutrition and the visual system. The building blocks of sight. The chemical processes that convert light into electrical signals within the retina require specific nutrients. Vitamin A plays a central role, participating directly in the reactions that occur when light strikes photoreceptors. Without adequate vitamin A, these reactions cannot proceed normally. Food sources of vitamin A and its precursors include dark leafy vegetables, orange and yellow vegetables like carrots and sweet potatoes, and certain animal foods. These provide the raw materials the retina needs for its daily function. The body regulates vitamin A levels carefully, storing excess in the liver and drawing on these stores when dietary intake varies. The relationship between dietary intake and visual function follows a pattern familiar in nutrition. Very low intake impairs function, leading to night blindness and other visual problems. Adequate intake supports normal function. Very high intake beyond what the body can use provides no additional visual benefit and, in extreme cases, can be harmful. For most people with varied diets, vitamin A intake is adequate. The larger question is whether additional nutrients beyond basic adequacy might support visual health, particularly as the system ages. Nutrients under study. Research has examined several nutrients for potential benefits to visual health, particularly in relation to age-related changes in the retina. Lutein and zeaxanthin, compounds related to vitamin A, are found in high concentrations in the macula, the central region of the retina responsible for detailed vision. They appear to act partly as filters, protecting the underlying tissues from potentially damaging short-wavelength light. Observational studies have found that people with higher dietary intake or higher blood levels of these compounds have lower rates of certain age-related retinal changes. Clinical trials have examined whether supplementation with these compounds can slow the progression of existing macular degeneration. The evidence suggests that for people with intermediate or advanced age-related macular degeneration, supplementation with a specific combination of nutrients, including lutein and zeaxanthin, may slow disease progression. For people without significant retinal disease, the evidence for benefit from supplementation is less clear. Astaxanthin, another compound related to vitamin A, has also attracted research interest. Found naturally in certain seafoods and in the algae that some fish consume, it appears to have effects on blood flow, including blood flow to the eyes. Some studies suggest it may support ocular circulation. though more research is needed to understand its long-term effects on visual health. The Mediterranean pattern, rather than focusing on individual nutrients. Many researchers look at overall dietary patterns and their relationship to visual health. The Mediterranean diet, characterized by high intake of vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, fish, and olive oil, with moderate wine consumption and limited red meat and processed foods, has been associated with lower rates of many age-related conditions. Observational studies suggest that people following dietary patterns rich in vegetables, particularly leafy greens, and fish may have lower rates of age-related macular degeneration. The combination of nutrients in these foods, including lutein, zeaxanthin, omega-3 fatty acids, and various antioxidants, may work together to support retinal health. This pattern aligns with general recommendations for healthy aging. Diets that support cardiovascular health, metabolic function, and overall well-being are likely to support visual health as well. Given the eye's dependence on good blood flow and efficient cellular function. Hydration and the eyes. The eyes require adequate moisture to function comfortably. Tears lubricate the surface, wash away debris, and provide a smooth optical surface for light to enter. When tear production decreases or tear composition changes, the eyes can become dry, irritated, and more susceptible to discomfort. Age brings increased risk of dry eye symptoms for many people. Tear production may decrease, and the glands that produce the oily layer of tears may function less efficiently. Environmental factors like dry air, wind, and prolonged screen use can exacerbate these changes. Systemic hydration matters for eye comfort, though the relationship is not simple. Drinking water supports overall hydration, but the eye's moisture depends on local tear production and retention as well as general fluid balance. Blinking regularly, especially during focused tasks, helps spread tears across the surface. Taking breaks during prolonged visual tasks allows the eyes to rest and replenish their moisture. For those with persistent dry eye symptoms, professional evaluation can identify contributing factors and appropriate management strategies. Artificial tears, environmental modifications, and in some cases medical treatments can provide relief. Dry eyes are common with age but are treatable, and persistent discomfort deserves attention. Part 8. The body's support for vision, blood flow, and oxygen delivery. The retina is among the most metabolically active tissues in the body. Its cells work constantly, converting light into signals, processing information, and maintaining the delicate structures that make vision possible. This work requires substantial energy and oxygen, both delivered through the bloodstream. The blood vessels supplying the eye are small and delicate. They must function efficiently to deliver nutrients and remove waste products. Any condition that affects blood flow throughout the body can affect these vessels and, by extension, the tissues they serve. This is why cardiovascular health matters for vision. The same factors that support heart health, regular physical activity, healthy diet, maintaining healthy blood pressure and cholesterol levels, also support the circulation that feeds the eyes. Exercise improves blood flow throughout the body, including to the eyes. Managing cardiovascular risk factors protects the small vessels that are essential for retinal function. The connection between overall health and eye health extends beyond circulation. Conditions like diabetes directly affect the eyes, damaging the small vessels of the retina in a process called diabetic retinopathy. Managing blood sugar levels protects against this damage. High blood pressure can also affect retinal vessels. The eyes do not exist in isolation, but as part of an interconnected system. Movement and the visual system. Physical activity supports visual health through multiple pathways. The improved circulation mentioned previously is one. But movement also engages the visual system directly, requiring it to process changing scenes, track motion, and coordinate with balance and spatial awareness. Activities that involve moving through varied environments provide natural visual exercise. Walking on uneven terrain requires constant visual input to navigate safely. Sports that track moving objects engage the smooth pursuit system. Even simple activities like turning to look behind you while walking stimulate the coordination between vision and movement. The vestibular system, responsible for balance and spatial orientation, works closely with vision. These systems must coordinate to maintain stable perception during movement. When this coordination functions well, you can walk or turn your head while maintaining clear vision. When it falters, dizziness or disorientation can result. Regular movement that challenges balance and coordination may help maintain this visual vestibular integration. Activities like walking on different surfaces, gentle balance exercises, or practices like Tai Chi that involve coordinated movement provide this kind of stimulation. The goal is not intense exercise, but varied movement that engages multiple systems. Posture and eye position. The position of the head and neck affects the visual system in ways that are easy to overlook. The eyes sit within the skull, and the muscles that move them attach to bone. The nerves and blood vessels that serve the eyes pass through the neck and base of the skull. Prolonged postures that strain the neck can affect this system. Looking down at devices for hours, holding the head in a fixed position, or slumping in ways that compress the cervical spine may have effects that extend to the visual system. The relationship between eye position and alertness, mentioned earlier, offers an example. Looking upward activates brainstem areas involved in wakefulness. Looking down has a more suppressing effect. This is not a prescription to keep the chin elevated at all times, but an observation that eye position and head position interact with brain states. Simple awareness of posture during visual tasks can help. Holding reading material so that the head remains in a neutral position rather than looking sharply downward. Taking breaks that involve looking up and around. Varying head and eye positions throughout the day rather than maintaining fixed postures. These small adjustments may support both visual comfort and overall ease. Part 9. Protection and prevention. Ultraviolet light and the eyes. Ultraviolet light, invisible to human vision, can damage ocular tissues over time. The cornea and lens absorb most UV radiation before it reaches the retina. But prolonged exposure can contribute to cataract formation and other age-related changes in the front of the eye. Protection from excessive UV exposure is straightforward. Sunglasses that block both UVA and UVB radiation reduce the cumulative dose the eyes receive. Wide-brimmed hats provide additional shade. Being mindful of peak UV hours, typically midday, when exposure is highest. This does not mean avoiding all outdoor light. The benefits of light exposure for circadian regulation and overall well-being are substantial. It means balancing those benefits with appropriate protection when UV levels are high and exposure prolonged. The same morning walk that supports circadian function poses minimal UV risk in most locations. A day at high altitude or on snow or water, where reflection intensifies exposure, calls for more protection. Physical protection. The eyes are vulnerable to physical injury. Their position on the front of the face exposes them to hazards that range from projectiles to falls. Protecting them from these risks is simple prevention. For those engaged in activities with eye injury risk, appropriate eyewear makes sense. This includes sports with fast-moving balls, work with tools or chemicals, gardening that involves branches or debris, and any situation where something might strike the eye. Safety glasses or sports goggles designed for the specific activity provide protection without impairing vision. Falls become more common with age and can result in facial injuries that affect the eyes. Maintaining good balance. Removing tripping hazards from the home. Ensuring adequate lighting for nighttime mobility. And using assistive devices when appropriate all help reduce fall risk. The eyes themselves contribute to balance through visual input, creating a circular relationship. Protecting against falls protects the eyes, and maintaining visual function supports balance. Regular monitoring. Comprehensive eye examinations serve multiple purposes. They assess visual acuity and determine whether corrective lenses would improve function. They screen for conditions like glaucoma that develop without early symptoms. They examine the retina for signs of age-related changes or other conditions. They provide a baseline against which future changes can be measured. The recommended frequency of examinations varies by individual factors. Those with existing eye conditions, strong family histories of eye disease, or conditions like diabetes that affect the eyes may need more frequent monitoring. For those without specific risk factors, examinations every 1 to 2 years are typical. These examinations are opportunities to discuss any visual concerns, review family history, and ensure that any changes are detected early. Many eye conditions are most treatable when caught early, before significant vision loss has occurred. Regular monitoring supports early intervention when needed. Part 10. The visual system in context. Vision and independence. The practical importance of vision for daily life is easy to appreciate. Reading, driving, preparing food, recognizing faces, navigating environments. All of these depend on sight. When vision declines, these activities become more challenging, and independence can be affected. This is why the small investments in visual health described throughout this discussion matter. They are not about maintaining perfect vision indefinitely, which is not realistic, but about supporting the visual system in functioning as well as possible for as long as possible. Even modest preservation of function can extend years of independent living and engaged activity. The relationship between vision and other aspects of health is bidirectional. Poor vision increases fall risk, which can lead to injuries that affect mobility and independence. Difficulty reading or seeing details can lead to social withdrawal and reduced engagement. Visual impairment can make medication management harder and increase reliance on others. Supporting visual health is therefore part of supporting overall health and independence. The practices that benefit vision. Regular outdoor light exposure. Varied visual tasks. Physical activity. Good nutrition. Cardiovascular health are the same practices that support healthy aging generally. They are not separate from general health practices, but integrated with them. Adaptation and acceptance. Some degree of age-related visual change is normal and universal. The lens stiffens. The pupil shrinks. The retina changes. These normal changes do not mean that vision loss is inevitable or that nothing can be done, but they do mean that adaptation is part of the process. Good lighting becomes more important with age. Brighter illumination for reading and close work compensates for the smaller pupil and reduced retinal sensitivity. Task lighting that directs light exactly where needed can be more helpful than general room lighting. Contrast becomes more important as well. Dark print on light backgrounds is easier to read than light on dark. Avoiding glare, which becomes more bothersome with age, improves comfort and visibility. Large print materials, adjustable font sizes on devices, and simple magnifiers can extend the ability to read and see details. Accepting these adaptations is not giving up on visual health. It is recognizing that the visual system changes with time and that working with these changes, rather than fighting them, supports continued function. The person who uses brighter lighting and larger print is not admitting defeat, but using tools to maintain engagement. The bigger picture. The visual system exists within a larger context of health, environment, and daily life. It responds to what you do, what you eat, how you move, where you spend your time. It is affected by sleep, by stress, by overall well-being. Supporting vision is not a separate project, but an aspect of supporting yourself as a whole. The practices described here are not prescriptions to be followed rigidly, but principles to be understood and adapted to individual circumstances. Morning light exposure matters, but the exact duration and timing can vary. Distance viewing is valuable, but how you incorporate it depends on your environment and schedule. Nutrition supports vision, but the specific foods you choose depend on your preferences and access. The goal is not perfection, but awareness. Understanding what the visual system needs and does, then making small adjustments to provide those things more consistently. The cumulative effect of these adjustments over years and decades is meaningful support for function and comfort. Conclusion: your eyes are remarkable organs, extensions of your brain positioned to capture light and transform it into the experience of sight. They do this continuously, effortlessly, from morning until night, year after year. They also perform another function, less conscious but equally vital, informing your body about the time of day, synchronizing your internal rhythms with the external world. The visual system changes with age, as all systems do. The lens stiffens, the pupil shrinks, the retina gradually transforms. Some of these changes are normal and universal. Others exist on a continuum with conditions that can impair vision more significantly. Understanding the difference supports appropriate attention and action. The practices that support visual health across the years are neither complicated nor burdensome. Morning light exposure that anchors the circadian rhythm. Regular opportunities for distance viewing that allow the focusing system to relax. Variety in visual tasks that maintains adaptability. Physical activity that supports circulation throughout the body, including to the eyes. Nutrition that provides the building blocks the retina requires. Protection from excessive UV exposure and physical injury. Regular monitoring to detect changes early. These practices work together, supporting not just vision but overall health and well-being. The same morning walk that provides light exposure also supports cardiovascular function and mood. The same varied activities that exercise the visual system also maintain mobility and engagement. The same dietary patterns that provide nutrients for the retina also support metabolic health. Vision is precious not only for itself, but for what it enables. The ability to read, to recognize faces, to navigate the world independently, to appreciate beauty, to remain engaged with life. Supporting visual health is supporting these capabilities, preserving the connections that make daily life rich and meaningful. The information offered here is knowledge, not prescription. It describes how the visual system works and what research suggests about supporting its function across a lifetime. What you do with this knowledge depends on your circumstances, your priorities, and your own sense of what matters. The small choices made daily, accumulated over years, shape the course of aging. Understanding the visual system allows those choices to be made with awareness rather than by default. Your eyes have served you from your first moments of awareness, capturing light and building from it the world you experience. They will continue serving as long as they are supported. The practices described here are a way of honoring that service, of giving back to the system that gives so much. The single most important understanding to carry forward is this: your eyes are not passive observers of your life, but active participants in it, shaped by every sunrise you greet, every horizon you pause to admire, every book you hold, and every distance you allow them to explore. The practices that support them are not complicated prescriptions, but simple recognitions of what they need and have always needed. Light to mark the beginning of each day, distance to remind them how to rest, variety to keep them adaptable, and the quiet awareness that they are connected to everything else in you that ages well or poorly. If this reflection has sparked something in you, some memory of a morning you might greet differently, or a distant view you might seek out again, we would be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if the library of wisdom we are building here speaks to you, we invite you to explore other recordings and to subscribe so that new chapters find their way to you when they are published. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.